I never thought the most awkward night of my life would begin with a text from my coworkers that simply said, "Don't spend your Friday answering emails." I almost didn't go out. I'd had one of those weeks where everything seemed to land on my desk. Last-minute client changes, endless meetings. Joseph, my boss, somehow staying perfectly calm while the rest of us looked like we were one spreadsheet away from a breakdown. He wasn't the intimidating kind of manager. He didn't yell. He didn't micromanage. Somehow that made him even harder to read. He was 36, always dressed better than everyone else, spoke carefully, and rarely shared anything about his personal life. Nobody knew if he was dating anyone. Nobody had ever seen him bring someone to company events. Whenever people asked, he'd just smile and steer the conversation somewhere else. I figured he was just private. So Friday night, after ignoring my phone for hours, I finally agreed to meet my college friend Marcus downtown. "You seriously need a life, Evan," he'd laughed over the phone. "We're going dancing." "I don't dance." "You stand awkwardly while holding a drink. Same difference." An hour later, I was standing outside one of the busiest gay clubs in the city, wondering why I'd agreed to this. The bass was already shaking the sidewalk. "You look terrified." Marcus grinned. "I just haven't been to a place like this in months." "Exactly why we're fixing that." Inside, everything changed. The lights flashed across packed dance floors. People laughed over the music. Bartenders moved faster than seemed human. For the first time all week, work disappeared from my head. I relaxed. Marcus disappeared almost immediately after spotting someone he knew, leaving me with a drink and strict instructions not to leave. I found a quieter corner overlooking the dance floor. It felt comfortable. Nobody cared what anyone looked like. Nobody was pretending to be someone else. I remember smiling to myself, thinking, maybe I should have come out more often. Then I looked toward the entrance, and my heart completely stopped. Joseph, my boss, standing 10 feet away. For a second, I genuinely wondered if I'd imagined him. Same dark hair, same calm expression. Except instead of one of his perfectly tailored office shirts, he was wearing dark jeans and a black fitted jacket I'd never seen before. He looked different, not younger, just lighter somehow. Like he'd left the office version of himself somewhere else. He hadn't seen me yet. I could have walked away. I probably should have. Instead, I froze with my drink halfway to my mouth. My brain started racing. Does he come here often? Is he actually gay? Does anyone at work know? Then his eyes lifted, straight toward me. Our eyes met. Neither of us moved. If there had been music before, I couldn't hear it anymore. His expression shifted almost imperceptibly. Surprise, recognition, then something that looked suspiciously like panic. I gave the world's most awkward little wave. He actually laughed, not loudly, just enough that I could see his shoulders loosen. He walked over. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to disappear into the crowd. Instead, I stayed rooted to the floor. "Evan," he said. "Joseph." There was a painfully long silence. "I wasn't expecting," I started. "To see someone from work," he finished. "Especially you." He smiled. I was about to say the exact same thing. Neither of us knew what came next. Finally, I blurted out, "So, this is weird." "A little. Very weird." He nodded. "Probably." Then, to my complete surprise, we both started laughing. Not because anything was funny, because it completely shattered the unbearable tension. "I guess," Joseph said after a moment, "we've accidentally learned something about each other." "I guess we have." Another silence. This one wasn't nearly as uncomfortable. "I should probably tell you," he said quietly. "I'd appreciate it if Monday morning didn't begin with office gossip." I blinked. "I'd never do that." "I know." The way he answered caught me off guard. You know, I hired you because you're trustworthy. That wasn't the answer I'd expected. He looked around the club before adding, still, I like keeping work and my private life separate. So do I. His shoulders relaxed again. Good. A group of people called his name from across the room. He turned and waved back. Friends, not co-workers, not clients, just people who clearly knew him outside the office. It suddenly hit me that I'd never once considered Joseph had an entire life beyond conference rooms and deadlines. He looked back at me. I should go say hello. Of course. He hesitated, then smiled. I hope you enjoy your evening, Evan. You too. He disappeared into the crowd. I stood there for another minute, trying to process what had just happened. Marcus suddenly appeared beside me carrying 2 fresh drinks. Dude? What? You look like you've seen a ghost. I stared across the dance floor where Joseph was laughing with people I'd never met. No, I said slowly. Worse. Marcus frowned. What happened? I took a long sip before answering. I just ran into my boss. Marcus nearly dropped both drinks. Your boss is here? I nodded. Marcus's eyes became impossibly wide. Oh. He leaned closer. This night just got a whole lot more interesting. Marcus refused to let the topic die. Okay, he said as we squeezed through the crowd toward the bar. Start from the beginning. I already did. No, you skipped the important part. What important part? What did he say? I laughed. He basically asked me not to tell anyone at work. Reasonable. I told him I wouldn't. Marcus nodded approvingly. Good. We ordered another round and found a quieter spot overlooking the dance floor. So, Marcus continued, is he hot? I nearly choked on my drink. That's your question? I'm asking as a concerned friend. I rolled my eyes. He's objectively attractive. And nothing. Marcus stared at me. You've absolutely noticed before. I have eyes. Exactly. I groaned. He's also my boss. Marcus raised both hands dramatically. Relax. I didn't ask if you were planning your wedding. Before I could answer, someone tapped my shoulder. I turned. Joseph. Again. Sorry, he said. Mind if I borrow Evan for a second? Marcus looked between us with the biggest grin I'd ever seen. I'll just disappear. He vanished so quickly, I wanted to strangle him. Joseph smiled apologetically. Your friend seems nice. He enjoys making every situation more awkward. I noticed. We shared another laugh. I hope I'm not interrupting. Not at all. He looked toward a quieter hallway near the restrooms. Would you mind walking for a minute? I hesitated only briefly. Sure. The hallway was much quieter than the dance floor. For the first time all evening, we could actually hear each other without shouting. Joseph leaned against the wall. I wanted to apologize. For what? For looking terrified when I saw you. I laughed. I think we both looked terrified. Fair. He rubbed the back of his neck. I've spent years making sure nobody from work ended up here. And then I showed up. Exactly. I'm sorry. He shook his head. You don't have anything to apologize for. There was a pause. I've been coming here for almost 3 years. That surprised me. Really? Not every weekend, but enough to know people. I looked back toward the dance floor. I never would have guessed. I know. His smile carried a hint of sadness. Most people at work don't know much about me. I noticed. He shrugged. It's easier. I wasn't sure what to say. After a moment, he asked, Can I ask you something? Of course. Were you nervous when you first saw me? I laughed. I thought I was about to get fired. He blinked. What? I don't know. My brain completely short-circuited. You genuinely thought I'd fire you because we accidentally went to the same club? When you say it out loud, it sounds ridiculous. Very. He smiled warmly. Evan. Yeah? I care far more about whether you finish your reports on time. That made me laugh harder than it probably should have. The tension kept melting away. For the first time since we'd met professionally, Joseph didn't feel like my manager. He felt normal. So, I asked, how long have you been with the company? He looked surprised. You don't know? I realized tonight that I know almost nothing about you. He thought for a second. 8 years. Wow. I started as an analyst. You weren't always the boss? He laughed. Definitely not. I made plenty of mistakes. I can't picture that. Oh, trust me. He smiled at the memory. My first presentation lasted 7 minutes because I accidentally skipped half the slides. I stared. No way. I was convinced I'd be fired. I needed to hear that. Why? Because you've always seemed perfect. Joseph actually winced. I hope not. Why? Perfect people are exhausting. That answer caught me off guard. I spend most days pretending I know exactly what I'm doing. You? Especially me. I couldn't help smiling. Somehow this conversation was making him seem younger, less distant, more human. A burst of cheering erupted from the dance floor. Joseph looked over. My friends are probably wondering where I disappeared. Mine too. Neither of us moved. Instead, he asked, "Can I tell you something that's a little embarrassing?" Sure. When I interviewed you, yeah, I almost didn't hire you. My stomach dropped. Seriously? You were overthinking every answer. I was terrified. I know. So why did you hire me? His smile returned. Because when I asked about teamwork, you stopped trying to impress me. I frowned. I did? You told me about helping your previous coworker finish a project that wasn't even yours. I remembered. I'd forgotten about that. I hadn't? He folded his arms. You seemed genuine. The compliment landed harder than I expected. Thanks. I've never regretted hiring you. For a second, neither of us spoke. Then his phone buzzed. He checked it and sighed. My friends are threatening to send a search party. I laughed. You should probably rescue them. I probably should. He took a couple of steps backward, then stopped. One favor? Anything. Monday. I nodded. Everything stays exactly the same. At work? Yes. No awkwardness. No special treatment. No pretending this conversation happened. I smiled. Deal. He extended his hand. I shook it. His grip was warm and confident. For a brief second, our eyes met again. This time, neither of us looked away immediately. Then someone shouted his name from the dance floor. Joseph smiled. I'll see you Monday. See you Monday. He disappeared into the crowd once more. I watched him go. Marcus reappeared almost instantly. So? So what? You two talked for 15 minutes. We just talked. Marcus narrowed his eyes. You have the exact same smile you had after your first date in college. I do not. You absolutely do. I opened my mouth to argue. Instead, I glanced back toward the dance floor. Joseph was laughing with his friends again. For some reason, I couldn't stop smiling. I spent the rest of Friday trying very hard not to think about Joseph. It didn't work. Every few minutes, my brain replayed the conversation in the hallway. Not because anything inappropriate had happened. Nothing had. It was simply strange seeing the man who always sat at the head of conference tables, laughing in a crowded club with his friends. He suddenly felt real. Marcus noticed my distraction almost immediately. You've checked the dance floor at least 6 times. I have not. You just did it again. I sighed. I'm just making sure this isn't some bizarre dream. He laughed. So, what's the verdict? My boss is apparently a normal human being. Shocking. By midnight, Marcus had convinced me to dance for exactly 3 songs. I was terrible. He enjoyed reminding me. Your rhythm is a workplace safety hazard. I came here to have fun, not to be attacked. We were laughing when someone bumped into me from behind. I'm so sorry. I turned. Joseph. Again. He looked equally surprised. Apparently this club isn't big enough. I was thinking the same thing. He smiled. My friends are leaving. Oh. He glanced toward the entrance where 4 people were putting on jackets. I just wanted to say goodbye. You didn't have to. I know. For some reason, that answer lingered. Have a good weekend, Evan. You too. He hesitated, then gave a small wave before heading toward the exit. I watched him disappear through the doors. Marcus leaned over. He's definitely your boss? Yes. He seems nice. He is. Marcus looked at me carefully. You respect him? I do? And that's making this weird. Exactly. He nodded. I get it. Monday arrived far too quickly. I barely slept Sunday night, not because I was worried about gossip, because I genuinely didn't know how we were supposed to act. Joseph had been clear. Everything stays the same. Still, it was impossible to forget we'd accidentally met outside work. I reached the office 15 minutes early, mostly to calm my nerves. The marketing floor was unusually quiet. Coffee machines hummed. Printers clicked. People wandered in carrying breakfast. Everything felt completely normal. Until I heard his voice. Morning, everyone. Joseph walked in, carrying his laptop bag exactly like every other Monday. Navy suit, white shirt, coffee in one hand, professional, composed. You never would have guessed he'd spent Friday night dancing. He greeted the team one by one. Morning, Lisa. Good weekend, Daniel? Morning, Claire. Then his eyes landed on me. Morning, Evan. Exactly the same tone he'd use any other day. Morning. That was it. No awkwardness, no secret smile, no hesitation. Just Monday. Oddly enough, that made me relax. He'd meant what he'd said. For the next 2 hours, we worked like nothing had happened. Emails, meetings, deadlines. At 10:30, Joseph stopped beside my desk. Do you have 5 minutes? Several coworkers looked up. My stomach instantly tightened. Sure. I followed him into one of the small conference rooms. The door closed. Joseph sat down across from me. So? I wanted to make sure you're comfortable. I blinked. About Friday. I am. You don't feel awkward? I was going to ask you the same thing. He smiled. I think we're handling it surprisingly well. I agree. He nodded. Good. I waited. That's it? Mostly. He folded his hands. I also wanted to tell you your client presentation was excellent. That caught me completely off guard. Oh, I forgot to mention it last week. Thanks. You've improved a lot since you started. The compliment felt sincere. I appreciate that. He leaned back. That's actually all I needed. I laughed. I thought I was in trouble. I've noticed. I always think I'm in trouble. I'll work on looking less intimidating. You really don't have to. No? No. I smiled. I've learned you're just a guy who likes dancing on Fridays. For exactly 1 second, Joseph looked horrified. Then he burst into laughter. An actual laugh, not the polite office version. I couldn't help laughing too. Someone walked past the glass wall outside the conference room. We both immediately composed ourselves. Joseph cleared his throat. Right. He stood. Back to work. As we stepped into the hallway, he was once again the calm department manager everyone expected. Nobody would have guessed we'd just been laughing about seeing each other at a nightclub. The rest of the morning passed quietly. Around lunchtime, I headed toward the break room. Joseph was already there making coffee. We were alone. He glanced over. I've been thinking. That sounds dangerous. It usually is. I smiled. What about? I never properly thanked you. For what? For respecting my privacy? I shrugged. It wasn't a difficult decision. You'd be surprised. Something about the way he said it made me pause. Has it happened before? He stirred his coffee for a moment. Years ago. His voice had become noticeably quieter. I ran into someone from another company. And? They thought it was funny. I frowned. They told people? They did. I'm sorry. It wasn't pleasant. For the first time since meeting him, I saw genuine hurt in his expression, only briefly. Then it disappeared. I changed jobs not long after. I stared at him. So that's why you're so private. He nodded once. I learned my lesson. Before I could respond, 2 coworkers entered the break room. Instantly, the conversation ended. Joseph picked up his coffee. See you at the 2 o'clock meeting. See you? He walked away. I stood there holding my mug, realizing something that hadn't occurred to me before. Friday night hadn't just been awkward for him. It had probably been terrifying, because unlike me, he'd already lived through the consequences once, and suddenly, I understood him a little better. By Wednesday, seeing Joseph outside of formal meetings no longer felt strange, not because we'd become friends, far from it. At work, he remained exactly what he'd always been, professional, organized, and somehow capable of answering emails faster than anyone else. But every now and then, there'd be a tiny reminder that Friday night had happened. A quick smile in the hallway, a quiet, "Morning, Evan." Nothing more. Oddly enough, that was enough. Thursday afternoon, our department received an email. Quarterly client dinner. Attendance requested. A collective groan spread across the office. Lisa rolled her chair back. Please tell me this year's restaurant is better. Daniel laughed. As long as there aren't speeches. There will definitely be speeches. Someone looked toward Joseph's office. Who's giving ours? Joseph stepped out almost on cue. I am. More dramatic groans. He smiled. I'll keep it under 5 minutes. We'll believe it when we see it, Daniel replied. Joseph laughed. I deserve that. The entire office relaxed. Moments like that reminded me why people respected him. He wasn't trying to be everyone's friend. He simply treated people well. The dinner was scheduled for Friday evening, exactly 1 week after we'd met at the club. The coincidence wasn't lost on either of us. Friday arrived. By 6:30, our department had taken over half of a modern Italian restaurant downtown. Clients sat at one end, employees at the other. Joseph moved easily between both groups, introducing people, thanking clients, making sure everyone felt included. Watching him work was oddly impressive. He remembered everyone's names, asked about people's families, even remembered details from conversations months earlier. No wonder he'd become department manager. Around 8, dinner finally ended. People started saying their goodbyes. Some headed home. Others announced plans to continue the night elsewhere. Daniel stood up. Who's coming for drinks? About half the team agreed. Someone turned to Joseph. You coming? He smiled politely. I'll pass tonight. Aw. I've got an early morning. Lisa narrowed her eyes. You always have an early morning. I know. She laughed. One day we're going to convince you. I wish you luck. As everyone gathered their coats, I stepped outside for some fresh air. The summer evening was warm. The city buzzed around me. A minute later, the restaurant door opened behind me. Joseph. He looked mildly surprised to see me. Escaping? For a minute. I had the same idea. We stood on the sidewalk in comfortable silence. You did a good job tonight, I said. Thanks. I mean it. He smiled. I appreciate that. After a moment, he asked, You heading home? I think so. No after party? I laughed. I've reached the age where free food is enough excitement. He nodded thoughtfully. I understand that feeling. Another quiet moment passed. Then his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and sighed. What? My friends. The club. He smiled sheepishly. They're asking if I'm coming. I couldn't help laughing. Already? They're persistent. He typed a quick reply. I looked away, pretending not to notice. After a second, he put his phone back into his pocket. They're not taking no for an answer. So, you're going? He hesitated. I hadn't planned to. But? They reminded me I've canceled twice already. I smiled. Sounds like good friends. They are. He looked at me for a moment. You? I don't have any plans. You should enjoy your weekend. I will. He nodded. I should probably get going. He took a step toward the parking lot, then stopped, turned back. Evan? Yeah? I know this might sound strange. I waited. If, he searched for the right words. If we accidentally run into each other again? I laughed before he could finish. At the same club? He smiled. Exactly. I promise not to act surprised this time. He laughed quietly. Deal. He walked toward his car. I watched him unlock it. For some reason, instead of driving home, I found myself thinking about Marcus. I pulled out my phone. Me. Busy tonight? The reply came almost instantly. Marcus. Always. Me. Want to go dancing? There was a full minute before he answered. Marcus. Who are you and what have you done with Evan? An hour later, we were standing outside the exact same club. Marcus looked at me suspiciously. This was your idea. I know. You hate spontaneous plans. I know. He folded his arms. There's something you're not telling me. I smiled innocently. Maybe I just had fun last week. Liar. We walked inside. The music was louder than I remembered. The crowd was even bigger. Marcus disappeared almost immediately again. Some things never changed. I wandered toward the upstairs balcony overlooking the dance floor. It took less than 5 minutes. There you are. I turned. Joseph, holding 2 glasses of water instead of cocktails. He looked genuinely amused. I suppose we should stop pretending this is a coincidence. I laughed. I was thinking the same thing. I almost texted my friends that I'd accidentally manifested a coworker. You would have sounded insane. I know. He handed me one of the waters. You looked thirsty. I accepted it with a smile. Thanks. Below us, hundreds of people moved with the music. For a while, neither of us spoke. Then Joseph asked, Can I ask you something a little personal? Sure. Were you always comfortable being yourself? The question caught me completely off guard. I looked at him. His expression wasn't casual anymore. He genuinely wanted to know. I took a slow breath. No. His eyes stayed on mine. Not even close. For the first time that evening, the conversation started becoming something much deeper than either of us had expected. Joseph's question lingered between us. Were you always comfortable being yourself? I let out a quiet laugh. I wish. He leaned against the railing, waiting. I came out when I was 21? College? I nodded. My parents were supportive. That's good. It was? I smiled faintly. But I wasn't. He looked surprised. I spent years pretending I wasn't gay. Why? I shrugged. Fear, mostly. Fear of what people would think. He understood immediately. I know that feeling. There was something about hearing those words from him that made my chest tighten. You? He looked out over the dance floor before answering. I was 29. I stared at him. 29? He nodded. I'd already been working for years. Wow. I dated women. My eyebrows lifted. Seriously? For a long time. Were you trying to convince other people? He smiled sadly. Or yourself? The second one. Neither of us spoke for a moment. The music below us faded into the background. I kept thinking it would change, he admitted. It didn't. No. It just became harder to ignore. I understood that more than I wanted to admit. So, what happened? He laughed softly. Burnout. At work? At life. He folded his arms. I woke up one morning and realized I couldn't remember the last time I'd done something that actually made me happy. His honesty caught me off guard. So, you came out? Eventually. Were people supportive? Some. And the rest. He looked down into his glass. The story I told you? The previous job? I nodded. It wasn't everyone. But it only takes a few people. He smiled without much humor. Exactly. For a while, we simply watched the crowd. I almost stopped going out altogether, he admitted. What changed? My friends. He pointed toward a group near the dance floor. 3 men and a woman waved enthusiastically when they noticed him. Joseph laughed and waved back. They refused to let me disappear. They seem persistent. They're incredibly annoying, but in the best way. I smiled. I'm glad they didn't give up. So am I. His friends eventually made their way upstairs. There he is. A tall guy with curly hair wrapped Joseph in a dramatic hug. We thought you'd abandoned us. I was talking. The man looked at me. Oh. Joseph smiled. Evan, this is Liam. Liam immediately held out his hand. So, you're Evan. I shook it. I've heard about you. Joseph's eyes widened. Liam. What? You have. I said one sentence. Liam grinned shamelessly. You mentioned running into someone from work. I looked at Joseph. You told them? Joseph looked almost embarrassed. I needed to explain why I looked like I'd seen a ghost last Friday. I laughed. Fair enough. Another friend joined us. I'm Noah. Evan. It's nice to finally meet the mysterious coworker. Joseph sighed. There was never any mystery. There absolutely was. Everyone laughed. Within minutes, I found myself chatting with people I'd never met before. They teased Joseph constantly. Apparently, that was normal. You should have seen him trying karaoke. Joseph groaned. No. Oh, yes. He chose Sinatra. I was confident. You were terrible. I was. I couldn't stop laughing. Seeing Joseph blush while his friends told embarrassing stories felt surreal. At work, he always seemed completely in control. Here, he was just another guy getting teased by people who cared about him. Eventually, Liam pulled Joseph toward the dance floor. Come on. I'll be there in a minute. No excuses. They disappeared into the crowd. Joseph turned back to me. I'm sorry about them. Don't be. They're impossible. They're hilarious. He smiled. They'll adopt you if you're not careful. I'll keep that in mind. Just then, Marcus appeared carrying 2 drinks. There you are. He stopped when he noticed Joseph. "Oh." Joseph smiled politely. "Good to see you again." "You too." Marcus looked between us. "I feel like I interrupted something." "You didn't." Joseph checked his watch. "I promised Liam one dance before he starts complaining again." He looked at me. "It was good talking." "It was." "I'll see you Monday." "You probably will." He headed downstairs. Marcus watched him disappear before turning slowly toward me. "Okay." "What?" "I officially don't understand this situation." I laughed. "What part?" "Your boss is ridiculously normal." "I know. You two talk like you've known each other for years." "We really don't." Marcus took a sip of his drink. "I've got a question." "Shoot." "If he weren't your boss." I immediately shook my head. "Marcus, I'm asking." I looked toward the dance floor where Joseph was laughing with Liam. "I don't know." Marcus smiled knowingly. "That's not a no." Before I could answer, my phone vibrated. An email notification from Joseph Carter. I frowned. Marcus noticed. "Work?" "I think so." I opened it. Subject: Monday client meeting. Nothing unusual. Just an agenda for Monday morning. I laughed. "What?" "He actually sent a work email from a nightclub." Marcus burst out laughing. "You're kidding." I turned the screen toward him. At the very bottom, beneath his signature, was one extra sentence. "Don't worry. I scheduled this before I left home. Enjoy your weekend." Marcus read it twice, then looked at me. "Your boss has jokes." I smiled despite myself. "Apparently he does." Across the room, Joseph caught my eye. He raised his glass with a small grin. I lifted mine in return. Neither of us crossed the room. Neither of us needed to. But for the first time since we'd met, it felt less like two people who happened to work together, and more like the beginning of a friendship neither of us had expected. Monday morning felt different. Not awkward, just different. Maybe it was because we'd spent another evening talking outside of work. Maybe it was because I now knew Joseph had an awful karaoke voice. Whatever the reason, I caught myself smiling when I walked into the office. Joseph was already there, standing in front of the conference room, reviewing the agenda for the client meeting. He glanced up. "Morning, Evan." "Morning." His expression remained perfectly professional. If anyone had been watching, they'd have assumed we were having the exact same interaction as every other Monday. In a way, we were. The client presentation went smoothly. Halfway through, the projector suddenly froze. The screen went black. Someone from the client's side muttered, "Of course." A few people chuckled. Without missing a beat, Joseph closed his laptop. "I suppose this is a good test." Everyone looked at him. "I've been told you should never rely on technology." He smiled. "Let's see if I actually listened." Instead of panicking, he continued the presentation from memory. No slides, no notes, just calm, confident conversation. 20 minutes later, the IT department finally fixed the projector. Joseph looked at the screen. "I think we're actually ahead now." Even the clients laughed. After they left, Daniel shook his head. "I would have had a heart attack." Joseph shrugged. "It wasn't ideal." "You didn't even look stressed." "I was." "You hit it well." "I've had practice." The office slowly returned to work. I was gathering my laptop when Joseph stopped beside me. "Nice job answering those budget questions." "Thanks." "You've gotten much more confident." "I had a good teacher." He smiled briefly. "I'll take the compliment." That afternoon, I was concentrating on a report when my phone buzzed. A message from Marcus. "Marcus, question." Me. "That's dangerous." Marcus. Are you free Friday? Me. Probably. Marcus. We're doing game night. Me. Sounds good. Another message appeared. Marcus. Can your mysterious boss come? I almost laughed out loud. Me. Absolutely not. Marcus. Coward. I put my phone away, still smiling. Something funny? I looked up. Joseph stood beside my desk, holding a folder. My friend. The one who abandoned you every 10 minutes at the club? That's him. Joseph laughed. He sounds entertaining. He thinks we should all play board games together. Joseph nearly dropped the folder. What? I told him that wasn't happening. I appreciate that. He was mostly joking. I hope so. We both smiled. Thursday afternoon brought unexpected news. Lisa walked quickly across the office toward Joseph's office. A few minutes later, she came back looking disappointed. Daniel frowned. Everything okay? She sighed. The regional director canceled. The visit next week? She nodded. Apparently, he's sending someone else. That didn't seem unusual, until she added, they're sending Michael. The room went noticeably quieter. Even Joseph's office door opened. His expression had changed, not dramatically, just enough that I noticed. Daniel muttered under his breath. Oh. Lisa looked uncomfortable. I forgot you two worked together. Joseph nodded once. A long time ago. Sorry. It's all right. He smiled politely, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. Later that evening, most people had already gone home. I stayed late to finish a report. As I walked toward the printer, I noticed Joseph sitting alone in his office. His computer was on, but he wasn't looking at it. He was simply staring out the window. I knocked lightly on the open door. You all right? He looked up, almost surprised to see me. Oh. Sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt. You didn't. I hesitated. You seemed distracted. He was quiet for a moment, then gestured toward the chair. Sit down? I closed the door halfway and sat. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Finally, he exhaled. Michael. The regional director? No. The manager replacing him. The one from your old company? He nodded. I suddenly understood. He knows. Joseph gave a small smile. He knows everything. I frowned. He was one of the people who made work difficult. My stomach sank. I was hoping I'd never have to work with him again. The room fell silent. After everything Joseph had shared over the past 2 weeks, it hurt hearing that. You don't have to explain anything to him. I won't. He doesn't get that right. Joseph looked at me carefully. You know? What? When I first met you? I assumed you were just another employee. I laughed. I was. But somewhere along the way, he searched for the right words. You became someone I actually enjoy talking to. That simple sentence meant more than he probably realized. I was thinking the same thing. A faint smile appeared. Then his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen. Liam. Joseph chuckled. What? He's asking if I'm alive. Tell him you're buried under spreadsheets. I might? He stood. I should probably head home. So should I. We walked toward the elevators together. The building was almost empty. As the elevator doors opened, Joseph suddenly spoke. Evan. Yeah? Next week might be uncomfortable. Because of Michael. He nodded. I'd appreciate it if you didn't worry. I probably will anyway. He laughed quietly. I suspected as much. The elevator reached the lobby. The doors opened. Outside, rain had started falling across the city. Joseph looked toward the entrance. I forgot my umbrella. I parked in the garage. So did I. He looked at me. Looks like we're making a run for it. We both laughed, then sprinted through the rain together, trying unsuccessfully to avoid getting soaked. For a few brief moments, neither of us was thinking about work, or Michael, or anything waiting for us next week. But neither of us realized that the hardest conversation of all was still coming. The following Monday started quietly. Too quietly. By 9 o'clock, everyone in the department knew the regional manager would be arriving before lunch. Even people who had never met him seemed tense. Joseph, on the other hand, looked perfectly composed. Only I knew better. I'd seen the expression on his face when Lisa mentioned Michael's name. He was nervous. He was simply better at hiding it than anyone I'd ever met. At 10:40, the elevator doors opened. A tall man in his 40s stepped onto our floor. Expensive suit. Perfect smile. Confident enough to own every room he entered. "Morning, everyone." People greeted him politely. Then his eyes landed on Joseph. For a split second, something cold passed across his face. "There you are." Joseph stood. "Michael, it's been a long time." "It has." They shook hands. To anyone else, it probably looked friendly. It wasn't. I could feel it from 20 feet away. Michael smiled. "I've heard good things." Joseph returned the smile. "I'm glad. I wasn't sure you'd still be in management." The comment sounded harmless. It wasn't. Joseph understood immediately. "So far," he replied calmly, "it's worked out well." Michael nodded. "I'm sure." He moved on to greet everyone else. The moment he turned away, I caught Joseph quietly exhaling. The morning meeting began 10 minutes later. Michael asked sharp questions. Nothing unreasonable. Just constant. Every answer Joseph gave seemed to invite another question, another challenge, another subtle attempt to put him on the spot. Nobody else appeared to notice. To them, it probably looked like normal executive discussion. To me, it felt personal. Still, Joseph never lost his composure, not once. After lunch, Michael approached my desk. "You must be Evan." "That's right. I've heard you're one of Joseph's strongest employees." I smiled politely. "I've learned a lot from him." Michael chuckled. "I'm sure you have." Something about his tone bothered me. He leaned closer. "Just remember." I frowned. Remember what? Managers aren't always who they pretend to be. Before I could answer, he walked away. I stared after him. The conversation left a sour feeling in my stomach. Around 4, Joseph stopped by my desk. "Everything all right?" I looked toward Michael's office. He talked to me. Joseph's expression changed immediately. What did he say? I repeated the conversation. Joseph was silent for several seconds. Finally, he sighed. "I was afraid of that." "Why?" "He likes planting doubts." I leaned back in my chair. "I don't understand." Joseph looked around to make sure nobody was nearby. "Michael was my manager." "I know." "When people found out I was gay," his voice stayed calm. He never said anything directly. But he'd make little comments, questions, rumors, suggestions. So everyone else would do the rest. My jaw tightened. "That's awful." "It was effective." He gave a tired smile. "I almost convinced myself I deserved it." I shook my head immediately. "You didn't. I know that now." A long silence followed. Then I asked the question that had been sitting in the back of my mind for days. "Why didn't you leave sooner?" Joseph looked down at the floor. "Because I loved my job." That answer hit harder than I expected. "I'd worked years to get there." He smiled sadly. "I kept thinking if I worked harder, they'd stop." They didn't. By 6 o'clock, the office had emptied. Michael had already left for the airport. The tension disappeared with him. I packed my laptop and headed toward the elevators. Joseph was waiting there. You heading home? Yeah. We stepped inside. For a while, neither of us spoke. Finally, I broke the silence. You know. What? I don't think Michael understands something. Joseph looked over. What's that? Everyone here already knows who you are? He frowned slightly. I don't mean... I searched for the right words. I don't mean your private life. I mean... I smiled. They know you're fair. They trust you. They respect you. Nothing he says is going to change that. Joseph looked genuinely surprised. You think so? I know so. The elevator reached the lobby. Neither of us moved immediately. Joseph looked at me for a long moment. Then, very quietly, he said, No one's ever said that to me before. I smiled. They should have. He laughed softly. I suppose I owe you dinner. I blinked. Dinner? He looked mildly embarrassed. As a thank you. Oh. Almost immediately, his expression changed. I mean, he rubbed the back of his neck. Only if that's appropriate. The reality of what he just suggested settled between us. He was my boss. We both knew exactly how complicated that made things. Joseph sighed. Forget I said anything. No. He looked back up. I don't want you to think I don't appreciate it. I do. But... He nodded before I even finished. The timing. Exactly. For a second, disappointment flickered across both our faces. Then Joseph smiled. You know. What? If either of us worked somewhere else? I laughed. I was just thinking the same thing. He shook his head with an amused smile. Life has a strange sense of humor. It really does. We stepped outside. The evening air was cool. Joseph unlocked his car, then turned back toward me. There's something I need to tell you. What is it? I've accepted another position. I froze. What? My last day here. He smiled gently. Is next Friday. My mind went completely blank. Everything suddenly made sense. The dinner, the hesitation, the invitation. Joseph continued quietly. I wasn't planning to tell anyone until tomorrow. But he met my eyes. I wanted you to hear it from me first. I stood there speechless as he climbed into his car. He lowered the window one last time. I'll see you tomorrow, Evan. Then he drove away. I watched his taillights disappear into traffic. Only one thought echoed through my mind. Maybe, just maybe, the timing wasn't impossible after all. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard the same sentence again. My last day here is next Friday. It explained everything. Why Joseph had hesitated before asking me to dinner. Why he'd looked so conflicted. Why he'd immediately tried to take the invitation back. He wasn't ignoring the fact that he was my boss. He'd already found a way to change that. The next morning, the entire office gathered for a department meeting. Joseph stood at the front of the room. His usual calm expression was there, but I could tell this wasn't an easy speech. I wanted all of you to hear this directly from me. The room became completely silent. I've accepted a position with another company. A chorus of surprised voices filled the room. My last day will be next Friday. Lisa looked genuinely shocked. What? Daniel frowned. Seriously? Joseph nodded. It wasn't an easy decision. Someone asked where he was going. He smiled. A consulting firm? Another person joked, They're stealing our best manager. Laughter spread through the room. Even Joseph laughed. I appreciate that. As everyone started asking questions about who would replace him, I quietly watched from the back, for the first time since I'd met him. Joseph looked emotional, not because he was leaving, because he genuinely cared about the people he worked with. The rest of the week passed far too quickly. People stopped by his office constantly. sharing stories, thanking him, asking for career advice. Even employees from other departments came to wish him luck. It made me realize something. Michael had been wrong, completely wrong. Joseph wasn't respected because of his title. He was respected because of how he treated people. Friday arrived, his last day. Someone had decorated the conference room. There was cake, coffee, far too many balloons. Daniel stood up first. I've worked with a lot of managers. He looked toward Joseph. You're the only one who ever made me want to do better, instead of making me afraid to make mistakes. Several people nodded. Lisa spoke next. You always listened. Claire smiled. You remembered everyone's birthdays. Someone laughed. Even mine, and I forgot my own once. The room filled with laughter. Joseph looked almost overwhelmed. Thank you. His voice was quieter than usual. I honestly don't know what to say. You don't have to, Daniel replied. We just wanted you to know. Around 5 o'clock, people slowly headed home. One by one, they hugged Joseph goodbye. Eventually, the office became quiet. I found him standing alone in his office, packing the last few things into a cardboard box. A framed photo, a notebook, a coffee mug. Need help? He looked up and smiled. I think I've got it. I stepped inside anyway. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he picked up an envelope from his desk. I almost forgot. He handed it to me. What's this? Open it later. I smiled. Mysterious. I thought you'd appreciate that. We carried the box downstairs together. When we reached the lobby, he placed it in the trunk of his car. Then he turned toward me. So, I suppose, he smiled. I'm not your boss anymore. I laughed. I suppose not. For a brief second, neither of us said anything. Then Joseph took a slow breath. I'd like to ask you something. I think I know. You probably do? He smiled, looking surprisingly nervous. Evan, would you have dinner with me tomorrow? Not as co-workers, not as manager and employee, just, he laughed softly. Two guys who happened to meet in a very unexpected place. I couldn't stop smiling. I'd like that. His shoulders visibly relaxed. I was hoping you'd say yes. I've been hoping you'd ask again. He laughed. So, 7? 7 sounds perfect. He nodded. I'll text you the restaurant. As he climbed into his car, I remembered the envelope. Can I open it now? Go ahead. Inside was a simple handwritten card. Evan, thank you for reminding me that not everyone judges people by the worst moments of their past. Running into you that night was the last thing I expected. Looking back, I'm really glad it happened. Joseph. I looked up. He was still waiting, holding the car door open. What do you think? He asked. I folded the note carefully and slipped it back into the envelope. I think, I smiled. I'm really glad I went to that club. He smiled back. So am I. The next evening, I arrived at the restaurant a few minutes early. Joseph was already there. This time there was no office, no meetings, no titles, no awkward rules. Just two people sharing dinner. Halfway through the meal, he laughed. You know. What? If someone had told me a month ago that meeting an employee at a gay club would end like this, I would have thought they were crazy. So would I. We both laughed. When dinner ended, we walked through the city together. No destination, no rush, just talking about travel, movies, family, everything we'd never had the chance to discuss before. As we reached the corner where our paths separated, Joseph looked at me. So, second date. I pretended to think about it. He laughed. That's a dangerous pause. I suppose I can make time. Good. He smiled in a way I'd never seen before. Not the professional smile from the office. Not the polite smile from our first meeting. Just a happy one. As he reached for my hand, our fingers intertwined naturally. It felt simple, comfortable. Right. Funny how one completely unexpected encounter on a crowded dance floor had changed both of our lives. Sometimes the person you're least expecting to meet ends up becoming the one you're happiest you found.